Welcome to my channel. As you saw in the title, we're going to be covering some more Warhammer content. Today we're going to be covering Malcador's darkest secrets, Malcador the Sigillite, Malcador the hero. But what does he hide is what we're going to be uncovering today. I do know a little bit about him as a character. I know he's like the advisor of the Emperor, kind of like the humanity or the only human there compared to all the other hired. He's a kind of a stark, not dark, but like, you know, he's a being of wisdom and often advised the sons, though the sons did not like his advice because they saw him as lesser for being a regular human. Now, what secrets must he hold? Let's find out together in this video.
The absolute massive universe of Warhammer 40k is chock full of grimdark mysteries that have continued to go unsolved. In this series, we're going to be diving into all of them in an attempt to shed some light on the darkest corners of the galaxy of the 41st millennium. We're going to be taking a look at an 8-decade-long conflict that was said to have been kicked off by one of the Emperor's lost sons. Despite the fact that the return of one of the Primarchs surely should have been a cause for celebration, all records pertaining to this event have been systematically purged. We're going to be looking at a veiled region of space that has been forbidden to be explored for over 10,000 years.
Is this like one of the sons that, you know, one of the 11th and 18th are the ones that got wiped? Or was the 2nd and 11th? I think it might have been the 2nd and 11th. Either way, are we checking into the in-universe lore reasons of why those two are just never to be spoken of?
Without an official reason for the lockdown ever having been given. We're also going to be taking a look at one of the series' most secretive characters, the right hand of the Emperor himself, Malcador the Sigillite, and more specifically, one of the darkest things that he ever did. However, before we dive headfirst into the grimdark, a quick shout out to this video's sponsor. Fall is finally here, and it's the perfect opportunity to cozy up at home with a mobile game that you can get stuck in. And
no,
big
thank
thanks
you.
to Raid Shadow
But
Legends
thank you.
for
Good for
sponsoring
you.
this video.
Good for you for a sponsor, but no thank you.
The War of the False Primarch. Out of all of the creepy, obscure, and mysterious events in 40k's lore, none have generated more speculation amongst the fanbase than the two missing Primarchs. Because, of course, that's 40k's biggest mystery of all time. But considering that Primarch is actually in its name, there's another topic that, although a bit more obscure, to those who know about it, it is an endless source for speculation. I speak, of course, of the War of the False Primarch. But what exactly was this war?
Yeah,
why does it reference a Primarch in its name? If I'm being honest with you, the details are pretty scarce. We don't really have a lot of concrete information to work with. The only thing that we really know about this event comes from a single paragraph in Imperial Armor Volume 2. Now, what we do know is that at one point in the Imperium's history, there was an 8-decade-long conflict, noted for being particularly dark and bloody, that swept through Segmentum Pacificus, plunging the entire sector into anarchy. The cause of this event was 11 separate chapters of Space Marines all turning traitor at the exact same time, that were all believed to have a similar singular goal and were united under a single powerful entity. All historical records and pretty much any documentation surrounding these events has been systematically purged, including the names of the 11 lost chapters, the higher-ups of the Imperium viewing the event as far too dangerous to be remembered. Whatever the details of this event were said to be so bad that the High Lords of Terra created what was known as the Pentarchy of Blood. This was a combined force of 5 different Space Marine chapters that were tasked with hunting down and eradicating every single member of the aforementioned traitors. And just looking at the names of the chapters involved in this group, the High Lords must have been scared shitless.
Why?
We've got the Death Eagles, who on paper are a successor chapter of the Raven Guard, but are heavily rumored to have been created using Emperor's Children gene seed. The Red Talons, an Iron Hand successor.
Oh, okay, I see.
Chapter that can trace its lineage back to the Great Crusade, and whose members were said to be a clan made up of the most unstable and brutal elements of the Legion, the Charnel Guard, who are the most vampire of all of the Blood Angels. They're a fleet-based chapter that sleeps in stasis crypts to extend their lifespans while not in service, and due to this practice has one of the most well-maintained armories, with relics of incredible power dating all the way back to the Great Crusade. And oh yeah, just for funsies, they threw in the berserker cannibals of the Flesh Terrors and the space sharks themselves, the Carcharodons, to round out the team.
I've never heard of those two. Space sharks and the that's crazy. I didn't know those existed. The space sharks seem. Damn! Oh my! There's space sharks out there. That's crazy. Those sharks in space. I didn't think they could get up there. I'm sorry.
Never before had a more metal group of Space Marine chapters been brought together, and what this indicates to me was that the High Lords of Terra were not taking any chances.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
What could have had them so freaked out? Could the mysterious figure that managed to turn all of these chapters have really been a Primarch, or at least something on that level? Could it have been one of the two missing Primarchs come back for revenge against the Imperium that sought to destroy them and their sons? Could it have been one of Fabius Bile's cloned Primarchs that somehow managed to get loose? Or was it not really a Primarch at all, but something of similar stature, potentially a powerful demon or alien that was masquerading as one of the Emperor's sons? What do you think it could have been? Honestly, I'm a little stumped on this one.
If I were to guess, probably the Primarch themselves, or else they wouldn't have hid it, or hid those Primarchs away. Because if it didn't involve the Primarchs themselves in some sort of fashion, then why would they hide them, you know?
At first, I thought it might have had something to do with one of the plots that goes on in the Beckwin novels. If you know, you know, I'm not trying to spoil it here, but I double-checked the dates and they just didn't line up. Let me know all of your theories about this down in the comment section. The crazier, the better. When it comes to the War of the False Primarch, there's just a ton of unanswered questions, and I hope this is a plot thread that Games Workshop decides to pursue in novel format in the future. As if I'm speaking from a bit more of a meta perspective, Games Workshop leaves seeds like this all the time for potential storylines, and this would make a great one. The possibilities for storytelling are endless here, and I'm sure any of the Black Library authors would absolutely have a field day with fleshing this thing out. The Sigillite's Confidant. Now, it's no secret that 40K is full of shady, mysterious characters.
Obviously.
Individuals who have had their hands in multiple major events, yet the details of their involvement still...
It's always going to be very unknown, but you know, everybody that's strong has something to do with something. A little plot here, a little plot here, some strings pulled there. You know, they always got something to do with something.
Remain a mystery to this day. And none exemplify this archetype better than Malcador the Sigillite, a perpetual that stood by the Emperor's side for over 6,000 years, and who is potentially the strongest human mortal psyker that ever lived. This dude was the right hand of the Emperor, and I can't really put into words just how big of a role he played in the creation of the Imperium. Fun fact, all of the perpetuals used to follow the Emperor, but one by one, they all became disillusioned with his plans and eventually abandoned him. Only Malcador never left his side. Pretty much every shady event that took place in the Imperium's history before the Horus Heresy, this guy had a role in it, or at least one element of it could trace its way back to him. He would become the first Grand Master of Assassins, as well as the father of the Inquisition. He even formed the Grey Knights chapter of Space Marines.
Hey, we love Grey Knights. I love Grey Knights. I love them. There, look at these boys. Let's go, my Grey Knights. I'm sorry.
At the time, they were known as the Knights Errant and acted as Malcador's secret police, to put it mildly. This dude was so mysterious and powerful that at one point, the Primarchs tried to get uppity with him, and he force-choked the shit out of War Master Horus, reminding a Primarch that they were not on the same level. Malcador's kind of a G. It's impossible to know the full extent of what Malcador had to do during the creation of the Imperium.
Man said, watch your tone, boy.
But there's no question that he was forced to do some truly horrific stuff in the Emperor's shadow. He was a very secretive man and didn't share the information of his deeds with many people, as not only was that information highly classified, but the nature of some of the things that he was involved with were said to be so horrific, an untrained mind simply knowing of their nature could be driven into madness. And believe it or not, we actually have an example of that exact thing happening.
Really?
You see, Malcador, despite being one of the most powerful people in the galaxy, was still a human man with human needs. He felt a compulsion to confess the long list of sins that he had committed, so he found the perfect listener. In comes a man named Ale Winter, a sanctioned historicist.
All right, I thought it was going to be Horus, considering that's the picture. I was like, oh, he talked to Horus. Of course, a nerd talks to another nerd, but never mind.
worked for the Sigilite, and truth be told, he was quite fond of him. He thought Malcador was a fascinating and insightful person, and they ended up becoming pretty close friends. Malcador would invite him to look at the vast collection of art that he had preserved from ancient Terra. They would play regicide together,
The Mona
and stay
Lisa.
up late into the night discussing philosophy, literature, and all manner of other subjects over a bottle of vintage Amasec. Winter stated that he thoroughly enjoyed their conversations and thus officially accepted when Malcador presented him an official role as his confidant. As time went on, however, Malcador would begin to bring up certain topics about his role in the Imperium. Malcador said these were things that couldn't be discussed elsewhere, and Winter was happy to be the ear that his friend needed. But as time went on, the nature of these conversations began to twist. They became darker and more disturbing with each new tale. At one point, he told Malcador that the conversations were making him incredibly uncomfortable, but he brushed his concerns away and went on talking, further exacerbating the uncomfortable feeling of dread building in his friend's heart. Soon after this, Malcador's stories began to veer into their darkest territory. He revealed to him secrets told to no one else, stories of the things that he had done, the sins he had committed, the betrayal of Horus Lupercal, the coming of the Chaos Legions, the Imperium's darkest secrets, and the true nature of the universe. He unloaded everything onto him.
Why?
And not just in a single conversation, as there were too many stories to tell. This became a regular, everyday occurrence. Every night, Malcador would tell him more, unburdening himself of the weight of his extensive sins. Whatever he told Winter, whatever terrible truths were whispered in his ear, were so horrific that Winter began doing everything he could to escape the Imperial Palace. Yet, time and time again, he was captured and brought back.
That's
his plans
crazy.
of escaping physically were an obvious.
That's crazy. He's that bad of a storyteller? I didn't think he was that. I mean, he's an old man. You know what? Never mind. These are old man stories. Of course they suck. I'm not gonna lie. Okay, this makes sense. Never mind. After putting that light, yeah, makes sense. Makes sense.
Futility. Thus, his mind turned to a far more tragic path of action. However, before he could follow through with his plans, during one of his escape attempts, he managed to infiltrate a secret laboratory of the Sigilite, where he learned an even more terrifying truth. He discovered a dead Eldari floating in a glass tank, and minus the more traditional Eldar features, to his absolute horror, it looked nearly identical to him. He sat there in the throes of madness, staring into his own face. It was then that via hologram, Malcador appeared before him and implored him not to do anything rash, that he was on his way and they could talk this through. Winter, now completely gripped by a state of madness, demanded answers. The Sigilite nodded towards the dead alien.
It took a long time to understand the structure of their genetic material, but adaptation was possible. He was dying when I discovered him, you understand. But even in those moments, I realized what kind of being I had found. A kindred spirit, something nigh immortal, with an intellect I could actually spar with. So few can match me. Can you blame me for wanting someone to talk to? A confidant to keep me sane.
He reveals to Winter that he was
He's a
actually
clone.
a clone.
He's a
Malcador had used the Eldar's
clone.
DNA along with human DNA
He's
to
a
create him. That his entire
clone.
life had been nothing more than a fabricated memory, although he had not been the first. He was a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. Winter demanded he tell him everything, to tell him the truth, to tell him why he would do this, and he was tired of playing the Sigilite's mind games.
There are no lies in this place. We have no time for them. I made you so I would have a voice that was not an echo of my own. Stripped the alien from that corpse, merged it with something more akin to a man. And you've been that for a long time, Ale. A good friend. Haven't we been good friends?
I wouldn't
Sobbing,
know.
Winters tells him that he doesn't want to hear his voice. Why did he keep telling him things? All the secrets and horrible truths of this war, and all the ones to come afterwards. Why confess them to him? He didn't want the burden. He couldn't contain them.
I
This
know.
is so sad.
That's why you killed yourself so many times. Hundreds of you, seeking death rather than live with what I told them. Another secret I kept. I regret it. But my need was greater than yours. Even I cannot carry my duty alone. So you helped me, my friend. You gave the Keeper of Terra's secrets a place where he could put aside his mask, even for a brief time, and confide. I know the toll is great, but you have my deepest gratitude.
This final secret was too much for Winter to bear.
Wow.
In his madness and enraged by the truth, he smashed open the incubation tube. The captured Eldari falling out onto the floor, his body withering away as soon as his skin made contact with the air. He grabbed a shard of broken glass and jumped on top of it, stabbing at it relentlessly, screaming at the top of his lungs that this wasn't him. He turned to the hologram and through tear-filled eyes told the sigilite that he would no longer be used by him. Malcador simply told him that that was not his choice to make. But to Winter's surprise, the voice didn't come from the hologram. Another iteration of Malcador stormed into the chamber, even as the one Winter was conversing with faded like a mirage. The sigilite was hard-eyed, and there was blood on his robes. The shadow he cast fell across Winter and made the air in the laboratory turn polar cold. He tried to move the makeshift crystal flex dagger, but his body was frozen in place. "Let me die." Winter forced out the words through his rigid jaw. "You have no right." "How much? More? How many more secrets do you have to admit?"
"An infinity of them,"
said Malcador, one hand on his iron staff as he lowered himself into a crouch.
"But I no longer require a confessor."
He reached out and took the glassy fragment from Winter's hand and threw it away.
"You are needed for something else."
The sigilite laid his long fingers over the planes of Winter's face and closed his eyes. Ethereal light glowed beneath his flesh and seeped out, illuminating Winter's skull from within. The adjutant began to scream. Now, it's no question that the Imperium is built upon a foundation of lies, secrets, and truths so terrible they must be kept under lock.
That's fucked, though. The fact that he just kept them. Oh my god, a clone of a clone of a clone of a clone of a clone. What kind of secrets do you have for it to be that crazy, you know? I looked up hentai. Sorry. That has to be in there. His search history's gotta be crazy. Gotta be crazy. Anyways, greater demon backshot. Let's get out. I'm stopping. Anyways, I'm just like, that's some crazy secrets he's got there going. I wonder what kind of how many stories, how many actions, how many twists, betrayals, assassinations, murders, blind cold murders, justified in his mind murders, slaughters, genocides, all that. He gave everything to this man. Search history and everything. And then just expected him to be normal. That's crazy.
Key at all times. But what could Malcador possibly tell someone that would make them want to delete themselves hundreds of times over?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Never get an answer to this.
We won't.
As Malcador sacrificed himself to maintain the Golden Throne while the Emperor battled his wayward son, Horus. But perhaps some written record still exists. Perhaps Malcador kept some type of journal. Somewhere out there, deep within the confines of the Inquisition's most restricted archives, locked away under the highest levels of security imaginable, may rest a forgotten memoir of a troubled old man. The Veiled Region. By the time of the 41st millennium, mankind had spread far and wide across the stars. I do want to know about this. Establishing around 1 million separate worlds throughout the galaxy.
Yeah.
However, there are certain sections of space that, for one reason or another, mankind has been unable to get a foothold in. Perhaps these are regions like the Coronis Expanse that are actively in the process of being charted by sanctioned rogue traders, or zones like the Halo Stars, which are so far out of the way and actively dangerous that colonization efforts are seen as a waste of resources. However, there is one region of space yet untouched by the Imperium known as the Veiled Regions that has been the subject of endless speculation for many years now. It is a vast unmapped region of wilderness in Segmentum Tempestus of the Galactic Cell that seems like it would make for a prime target for human expansion. However, since the time of the Great Crusade over 10,000 years ago, the Imperium has forbid anyone from entering this mysterious place for reasons unspecified, even going as far as to say attempts at establishing a human colony there will be met with a punishment of the highest order. But why is this? Why would such a vast, unmapped area be completely written off? What absolute horrors could be lurking within the dark corners of this shadowy and mysterious place that would call for such a radical policy? Due to this...
Probably... Hive? Tyranids? Maybe Tyranids. But that makes way too much sense, no? Wouldn't Tyranids make a little too much sense? I feel like it has to be something else, right? You know, more... It could be more of those, because we saw there's like those floating black orbs that exist in the warp. Something like that, maybe. Or maybe an ultra god. You know, we don't know. It could be anything.
strict enforcement of these laws.
Also, look at that
Information on the veiled region
Bro, imagine having a planet called Baka, bro. Oh my god. Baka. I'm sorry. Okay, we're moving on. All right, we're cutting it. We're cutting the bit.
regions is pretty hard to come by. The scant few reports that we have claim that the region is inhabited by orc freebooters, several yet unidentified species of intelligent Xenos life, and even a handful of Necron dynasties.
So much for
now,
my...
these are certainly threats to be taken.
Spent 30 minutes, or I've spent 5 minutes analyzing and guessing, and here we get all the answers in the next few seconds after the pause. Of course.
Into consideration, but are not obstacles that are not found elsewhere in the galaxy. So there has to be something more to it. However, if we were to play devil's advocate, the reason that is passed around by many Imperial scholars is that the veiled region, for some reason, is completely cut off from the Astronomicon's guiding light, making it incredibly difficult to navigate. Even further, astropathic transmissions originating from ships that have entered the region never reach their intended destination. Whether they be a message of good fortune or a dire warning, all that the receiver ever hears is cold, dead static. Since astropaths and navigators play such a critical role in space travel for the Imperium, it is possible that the veiled region has simply not been probed because it would cost a conceivable amount of additional resources to do so. But is the reason that humanity is barred from entering here simply a matter of logistics? If I'm being honest, I'm not entirely convinced.
Yeah,
I'd
probably say no.
This is a region that has been in the lore forever, but Games Workshop hasn't touched it in over a decade. The last time we gained any kind of insight was in 2009 with the release of the novel Hellforged. Not to get into a full-blown discussion of that novel here, but it follows both the Adeptus Mechanicus and the Soul Drinkers chapter. The Soul Drinkers were here because they had recently been declared traitors and were attempting to hide, and the Mechanicus had gotten a hold of a Xenos artifact that was a mask that resembled a human face, but was clearly made by intelligent Xenos hands. To them, this indicated that there were humans living in the region that were not part of the Imperium, and they may have committed the sin of aligning themselves with
Chaos?
However,
aliens?
later in the novel,
Xenos.
we find out that the mask was of
Why would I say chaos? Why would I say chaos? Obviously Xenos.
Necron make, and that there were non-Imperial human worlds here, and they were being attacked by them. And fun fact, it had a great, albeit terrifying, early depiction of Flayed Ones, where Flayed Ones acted like sleeper agents that would hollow out a person's body cavity and then slide inside them like they were a meat suit, wherein they would pose as corpses on the battlefield to ambush people, or just appear as a heavily wounded soldier so they could infiltrate behind enemy lines.
That's crazy.
This novel was released before the Necron's lore got overhauled in 5th edition and they got a lot more personality. And back then, they were this unknowable and terrifying cosmic horror, so the reveal in the book that Necrons were here was actually kind of a big deal. But by today's standards, it's not really that exciting. Many Warhammer fans point to this novel as the end-all be-all discussion when it comes to the Veiled region, but at the end of the day, it only covered a very small portion of it, and the Imperial edicts had been in place long before the Necrons here were discovered. For me personally, I'm convinced that there's something else out there, but we'll just have to wait for Games Workshop to take the story there once again.
Well, what are the chances for that, though? Seeing that it hasn't been touched for 10 years, they probably won't touch upon the topic for any time soon, considering everything they
and
have
those
working.
were 3 of Warhammer 40k's grimdark mysteries. Which one was your favorite and why? What do you think the
Malcador's,
false Primarch
for
was?
sure.
Was it actually a Primarch or something else that was just as powerful? What kind of secrets do you think that Malcador told his confidant? And what's actually going on in the Veiled region? Why do you think its access is so heavily restricted? Also, do you know of any other spooky mysteries, mysterious events, or unexplainable phenomena from Warhammer 40k that you'd love to hear me talk about? I always get the best suggestions
More
for
secrets,
stuff to research
please.
from you guys, so let me know all of your thoughts, comments, questions, concerns, anything like that down in the comments section below. And don't forget to download Raid Shadow Legends using my link in the description or by scanning my QR code on the screen. If you know me, the spooky mysteries of 40k are my favorite part of this franchise, and I look forward to reading everything y'all have to say. Anyways, that's all the mysteries I had for you today. Big thanks to everyone who supports the work that I do, and I will catch you all in the next one.
Alright, and that has been my reaction to 40k. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Definitely very interesting. Malcador, obviously, you know, the fact that he made a clone just to torture him with his own personal browsing history is crazy. And it's, it's not an exaggeration in any words. Man really said, I'm gonna tell you the truth, but nothing but the truth, and it's gonna drive you mad. Mad left, mad right, any mad, up mad, bow down mad, It's just mad. The fact that it took so many copies of him to get to that point, if they all just managed to off themselves before they even got there, it's crazy. For sure. For sure. And honestly, I gotta say, I very much enjoy this. Obviously, I'll do more. Hope you guys enjoyed. I think for the first one, it was tied to the Primarch. Second one, I feel bad for the dude, the copy, the clone. And for the third thing, I think it's fine that they're just regular planets that we haven't just got to. But I think it is very weird. Maybe there's like a shard of an old one out there, or like something of similar nature, like a void dragon type shard that is just like, we don't have the resources to mess with this again, because technically when this was sanctioned was when the emperor was around, as far as I understand. So he's like, I don't want to mess with that again, let's just leave it alone. That's what I think. Anyways, besides that has been my reaction to the more, Warhammer content. I hope you guys enjoyed the video very much as well. And as well as, the original video will be down in the description below. Besides that, I hope you guys all enjoy the content. Have a great day. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Bye bye.